For years, I believed I was living a love story that would last forever. Nimra wasn't just my wife, she was the rhythm of my mornings, the calm in my storms, and the reason my world felt complete. Every day began with her laughter echoing through the kitchen, the smell of fresh coffee filling the air, and the quiet certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be. We had a life that looked perfect from the outside. Shared dreams, inside jokes, lazy Sunday mornings, and planned for a future we both pretended to see the same way. But somewhere along the line, something changed. It wasn't sudden. It was subtle, almost invisible at first. Her smiles grew shorter, her hugs colder. The space between our conversations widened until silence became the language we spoke best. I told myself it was stress, that every marriage goes through quiet seasons. I clung to that hope, blind to the truth slowly unraveling behind her tired eyes. Sometimes I catch her staring at her phone a little too long, her fingers trembling before she locked the screen. Other nights, she'd come home late, smelling faintly of a perfume she didn't own. And still I said nothing. I wanted to trust her more than I wanted to face what my heart already knew. Love can be cruel that way. It makes you ignore the signs, justify the lies, and pray that you're just imagining things. I thought our love was unbreakable, that we were different. But deep down, a quiet fear was growing, whispering a truth I wasn't ready to hear. I didn't know it then, but the life I thought we had was already over. I was just the last one to realize it. It started with small things, the kind that most people would notice. Nimra began spending more time on her phone, her laughter suddenly reserved for someone on the other end of a glowing screen. When I asked who it was, she'd smile faintly and say, "Just a friend from work." The answer was harmless enough, but the way she said it, the hesitation, the half-smile that didn't reach her eyes, left a quiet ache in my chest. Then came the late nights. Deadlines, she'd say, kissing me on the cheek before leaving with a bag that seemed heavier than usual. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that love meant trust. But trust doesn't stop your heart from racing when she doesn't answer your call, or when the clock hits midnight and her side of the bed is still empty. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things, that I was becoming paranoid. But the distance between us grew like a shadow that refused to fade. Our conversations turned mechanical. Questions with rehearsed answers. Smiles that never quite felt real. Even the way she said my name began to sound different, as if it no longer belonged to her. One evening, she came home and hugged me, tightly, almost desperately. For a moment, I thought maybe things were changing for the better. But when she pulled away, I saw a guilt flicker in her eyes. Quick, fragile, and gone before I could name it. That night, as she slept beside me, I lay awake listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. It was the same sound I had fallen in love with years ago, but now it felt foreign, as if it belonged to someone I no longer knew. My instincts screamed that something was wrong, yet my heart kept whispering, "Hold on just a little longer." It was a kind of silence that builds before a storm, still, suffocating, and impossible to ignore. I didn't know what she was hiding yet, but I could feel it pressing between us like an invisible wall. And soon, I would learn that some truths don't wait to be found. They eventually find you. It happened on a rainy Thursday night, the kind that turns a city into a blur of lights and reflections. Nimra had texted me earlier, saying she'd be home late again. I didn't reply. I just sat by the window, watching raindrops race each other down the glass, waiting for the sound of her key in the door. When she finally walked in, it was past midnight. Her clothes were damp, her hair slightly tangled, her eyes red and swollen, like she'd been crying for hours. I didn't ask where she'd been. I just looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw the truth written across her face. She stood by the doorway, trembling, unable to meet my gaze. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Nathan, I need to tell you something." My stomach tightened, but I didn't move. I just nodded for her to go on. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she struggled to find the words. I've been seeing someone," she finally said, her voice cracking like glass. It wasn't supposed to happen. I never meant for it to go this far. For a moment, everything inside me went silent. No thoughts, no anger, just a numb emptiness spreading through my chest. I wanted to speak, but my throat felt frozen. She kept talking, confessing piece by piece, her words cutting through the stillness like blades. "It started at work," she said between sobs. "We were just friends at first, but then I got lost. I don't even know why. I swear I didn't mean to hurt you." I watched her crumble, the woman I'd loved for years, and all I could think about was how small she looked, how far away. Every memory, every promise, every quiet morning together flashed before me, tainted now with the weight of betrayal. When she said, "I stayed at his place a few times," I felt my heart twist painfully. Still, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sat there, listening, like a stranger hearing the story of someone else's life. She waited for me to say something. Anything, to scream, to curse, to ask why. But I had no words left. My silence was louder than anger could ever be. Finally, I stood up, my voice calm but hollow. "Thank you for telling me," I said. That was all. No accusations. No questions. Just the truth hanging between us. Heavy and irreversible. She tried to reach for my hand, but I stepped back. Her touch felt foreign now, unfamiliar and cold. Outside, the rain kept falling, steady and merciless. Inside, the last pieces of us were breaking quietly. That night, I realized some confessions don't free you. They destroy what little was left to save. After a confession, the silence in the room felt unbearable. Nimra sat on the couch, her hands covering her face, her sobs echoing softly through the dimly lit apartment. I stood by the window, staring out at the rain, trying to steady my breathing. Every drop that hit the glass sounded like a heartbeat, one that no longer belonged to us. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, to ask her why, but the words wouldn't come. Anger felt pointless. Nothing I could say would change the truth she had just laid bare. The love I had protected so fiercely had already died. She had buried it long before that night. After a long stretch of silence, I walked to our bedroom. My hands were trembling as I reached for my phone. I stared at the screen for a while, my thoughts spinning, then typed out a message that would end everything. It was short, too short for the years we had shared, but just enough for the closure I needed. "Thank you for being honest, Nimra. I hope the man you chose gives you the happiness you couldn't find with me. You don't owe me any more explanations. Take care of yourself." I pressed send. A few seconds later, I heard the faint buzz of her phone in the other room. Then came her voice, soft breaking. "Nathan, please don't do this. We can fix it. I made a mistake." I walked back into the living room. She was standing now, tears streaking down her face, her hands reaching out toward me. For a moment, I almost faltered. But then I remembered every night I had waited for her, every unanswered message, every forced smile, and I knew this was the only way. I picked up my bag, one I had packed quietly while she was talking. I looked around our home, at the photographs on the wall, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. It all felt like a museum of a love that no longer existed. "Goodbye, Nimra," I said softly. She tried to stop me, clutching at my arm, whispering apologies I couldn't bear to hear. I gently pulled away. There was no anger in me anymore, only an empty kind of peace. When I stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The air was cold, sharp, and strangely clean. I didn't look back. For the first time in a long while, I felt free, not because I stopped loving her, but because I finally chose myself. The days that followed felt like walking through fog, each moment heavy, soundless, and strangely unreal. I moved out of our apartment and stayed with my friend Ryan for a while. He didn't ask questions, and I was grateful for that. The silence between us was easier than any conversation could have been. At first, I kept expecting her to call. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart would tighten, hoping it was her, fearing it was her, and when her name finally did appear on the screen, I couldn't bring myself to answer. I couldn't bear to hear her voice, not when every word would reopen the wound I was trying to close. Nights were the hardest. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, haunted by memories that refused to fade. Her laughter echoing in the kitchen, her sleepy smile in the morning light, the way she used to trace circles on my arm when she couldn't sleep. All those small, Innocent moments that once meant everything now felt like ghosts pressing on my chest. I started writing, not letters to her, but thoughts I couldn't say aloud. Words poured out in quiet fragments. Hurt, disbelief, loss, forgiveness. It wasn't for her. It was for me, a way to keep from drowning in everything I felt. Ryan tried to cheer me up with small things, a movie, a drink, a walk around the city, but the world had lost its color. Everything seemed muted, like my emotions were trapped behind glass. Then one evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, something shifted. I realized I hadn't thought about her for a few hours. The ache was still there, but it wasn't all-consuming anymore. It was softer, distant. That night, I slept without replaying her confession in my mind. For the first time in weeks, my dreams weren't about her. They were just dreams. Empty, calm, ordinary. It was then I understood. Healing doesn't arrive suddenly. It creeps in quietly, between moments of pain, until one day you realize the silence doesn't hurt anymore. I still loved her, in a way, not with hope, but with acceptance. And maybe that was enough to begin again. Months slipped by like pages in a forgotten book. For Nathan, time began to heal in small, steady breaths. But for Nimra, time became an unrelenting mirror, reflecting everything she had lost. At first, she tried to convince herself she had done the right thing, that leaving one love for another meant chasing happiness. The man she had chosen, Adam, was exciting, unpredictable, everything Nathan wasn't, or so she thought. But the thrill faded quickly. The late-night laughter turned into arguments, and the warmth she'd mistaken for passion became cold indifference. Adam began to pull away. He stopped answering her messages as quickly, stopped showing up when she needed him. The same excuses she once gave Nathan now came from Adam's lips. Work, friends, just tired. Slowly, painfully, Nimra realized she had become the person she once betrayed. One night, she came home to an empty apartment. Adam's things were gone. No note, no explanation, just silence. The same silence she had left behind months ago. For the first time in a long while, Nimra cried not out of guilt but out of understanding. The emptiness that Nathan must have felt. She now carried it in her own chest. Days blurred together. She scrolled through old photos of her and Nathan. Their wedding day, their vacations, the smiles that once came so easily. She typed long messages she never sent, pouring out apologies, regrets, and broken promises. "I miss you," became a phrase she whispered into the dark, even though she knew he would never hear it. She tried calling him once. The phone rang, but he didn't answer. She waited, hoping for a text back, even just a single word. But the screen stayed dark. That silence cut deeper than any argument ever could. Her friends noticed the change. She stopped laughing, stopped showing up to gatherings. The light in her eyes dimmed. People whispered, wondered what had happened. But Nimra couldn't explain, because how do you tell someone that you destroyed your own happiness? Sometimes she walked past places she and Nathan used to visit, the coffee shop on 5th Street, the park where he first said, "I love you." Each corner carried a memory that burned quietly inside her. She began to understand that betrayal doesn't just break the person you hurt. It shatters you too, piece by piece, when the realization comes too late. And in that quiet punishment, she carried the weight of her choices every single day. Some nights, when the world was still, Nimra imagined him smiling again, not with her, but with someone else. It hurt, but it was a pain she accepted. Because deep down, she knew she had lost the one man who would have loved her forever, and it was no one's fault but her own. Time didn't erase the pain, but it softened its edges. Nathan learned to live with the silence, to find comfort in things that once felt empty. Morning coffee by the window became his ritual. The warmth in his hands, the sound of birds outside, the slow return of calm. Life, for the first time in years, moved at his pace. He started painting again, something he hadn't done since college. At first, the brush felt foreign in his grip, but soon the colors began to spill onto the canvas like thoughts he couldn't say aloud. Each stroke carried a piece of what he felt. Sadness, anger, forgiveness, freedom. Art became his quiet confession. He reconnected with people he had slowly drifted away from. His sister, old friends, even his parents, who had worried but never pried. Conversations became easier. Laughter didn't feel forced anymore. Somewhere along the way, Nathan realized he wasn't just surviving. He was healing. Nimra's name still lingered sometimes, like a faded echo in his mind, but it no longer brought pain. Just memory, distant and harmless. He understood now that not all love stories are meant to last forever. Some exist to teach you what love should never feel like again. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the room in amber light, Nathan opened his phone. He typed a message he had thought about 100 times before. I forgave you long ago, Nimra, but forgiveness doesn't mean I'll come back. He stared at it for a while, then deleted it. He didn't need to send it, because forgiveness wasn't for her. It was for him. When he stepped outside that night, the air was cool and the world felt wide again. He smiled a small, genuine smile and realized that peace doesn't arrive with answers. It arrives when you stop needing them. Almost a year had passed since the night Nathan walked away. The seasons had changed, and so had he. The pain that once consumed him had settled into quiet acceptance. He no longer searched for closure. He had already found it within himself. One chilly afternoon, as he sat in a small cafe downtown sketching his notebook, a familiar voice broke the hum of soft music and clinking cups. He looked up, and there she was. Nimra. She looked different, not in the way time changes someone, but in the way regret does. Her eyes carried a softness, a weight that hadn't been there before. For a brief moment, the world seemed to pause. "Nathan," she said gently, almost afraid to speak his name. He smiled faintly, polite but distant. "Hey, Nimra." There was so much that could have been said, apologies, explanations, memories, but neither spoke them. Some things were better left untouched. She managed a small smile, her voice trembling. "You look happy." "I am," he replied simply. She nodded, eyes glistening, as if those two words told her everything she needed to know. He wished her well, sincerely, and stood to leave. As he walked out, sunlight spilled across the street, warm and weightless. He didn't look back, because for the first time, he didn't need to. And as he stepped into the light, one truth settled in his heart. She had spoken her truth once, and now, in his silence, he had spoken his. In that quiet goodbye, he finally found peace.